Hello, welcome to this next tutorial. In this tutorial we're going to have a bit of a Christmas theme. We're going to create like a hooded Mrs. Santa kind of dress, and then we'll play around with it, get some thickness and nice kind of fluffy collars and trims and such like. So we'll start off as we normally start off. Let me just move this over. Ooh, just give myself a bit of space. And we use the polygon tool and we're going to draw out the top. Now I'm not going to make this particularly tight fitting. I want it to be kind of loose and baggy and warm and cozy, so I'm not going to go too I'm not going to fit it too much. So let's just click to draw out our points. There's one for the underarm. I'm just going as far as the waist for the moment, and then we'll come up and finish off. There we go. And of course we'll go to the curvature tool and just pop a little curve in the neck there and a curve in the arm. I've gone a bit mad there. Let me adjust this point, or this point's curve. There we go, that's a bit better. And this one is perhaps not enough. In fact, I think this is probably not wide enough, so I'm going to pull that way. There we go. And I'm also going to move this top piece up just to accommodate for the space that goes over the shoulder. Okay, right, so we'll select this pattern and then right click and symmetric pattern with sewing, and then pop that to the side, and then we'll just sew it up. So with segment sewing, I'll click on one side and then the other, and that will sew the fronts up. We might join those together later, not sure yet, but when we get there we'll merge them together perhaps. Okay, so that's the front, and we'll take this as a kind of a prototype for the back. So I want to copy and mirror paste this, and then we'll arrange it on the avatar. So Shift and the F key will turn on your arrangement points, and then select your back pieces and pick a point on the back. And for the front, I'm just going to move these out of the way so I can see the arrangement points, and then pick one on the front and then Shift F to turn them off again because they're a pain. And now we'll sew it up. So segment sewing, so side to the side. That should do the other side as well because they're symmetric and they've got the sewing set up. And then we'll do one of the shoulder straps, and that will do that job as well. So if I press space, that will sim to the body, and now we just need to kind of adjust it a little bit. Now the arms are a little bit baggy, the back is, this curve is too much, so I'm going to take these points up, and then if I select that point, I'll adjust that one to make the curve a little bit less daft. There we go. So that's that bit. We'll adjust that a little bit in a moment. So the arms, we want to take all of these points and just move them up a little bit so they get closer to the armpit. And then I think we perhaps want to adjust this curve to shorten that line a bit so it doesn't bulge too much as it's going around. There we go. As I said, I'm not fitting this, it's not like a fitted thing, it's almost like a hoodie dress. We're going to put a hood on this one. Did I mention that? Probably not, I meant to. Okay, so that's the essential starting point. I said I was going to adjust this curve here, and I am. So these two lines I want to match together. I want to move this pattern so it's butting up to this line. So I'm going to right click there and match up to center. Now I can see that I've got this kind of armhole here, and I've got this neck hole here, and it's all a bit jagged. So what I'm going to do is select on that point and just move it around a bit until I get more of a smooth curve around there. because that will help. You know, when you get these kind of jaggedy collar bits, you tend to, you know, it doesn't tend to look right. You tend to get kind of creases where you don't want them. You know, natural creases are nice, but creases because the pattern's wrong, not so nice. So this arm piece I'm going to do the same with. I'm just going to perhaps shorten that, and I want this line to curve around and almost carry on. So on this side I'm just going to adjust in the same way. See, now it's kind of far more straight and curved and consistent, whereas previously it was coming to like a point, you know, which again can cause you some issues. Okay, so let's press space to resim that. Similar to this top point, this side point is going to have a similar issue. So I'm going to right click there and match up to center, and for this one I'm going to select this point here. I think that one's okay. If I select this line here, I'm just going to bring that down so that this point is, or this curve is, far more consistent and not going to too much of a point. There we go. Let's press space. Now we've got some nice round armholes, we've got a nice round neck hole, and we're all good. So what we'll do in the next bit is pop some arms on this, and then we'll go on to put the hood on before I move it, you know, expand it down into a dress. So I will talk to you in the next section. Okay, so let's pop some arms on this, and for that I'm going to match up a couple of lines. So we'll match these two again. So let's match up to center. Unfortunately this one, because it's linked edited, kind of moves around as well, but I'll ignore that for the minute. And what I want is to create a pattern piece that fills this area. So what I'm actually going to do is duplicate these. I'm just going to copy them and paste them over here. There we go. And now I want to merge these lines together so it becomes one piece. So it's right click and merge. And now this line I can right click and extend offset as a pattern outline, not extend. Create internal line. Let me just move this out of the way. I'm going to give it some beans. There we go. So with that we get this new shape. It's not quite filled it in, but we can make it do so. So let's do that. So let's click OK to start with, and then double click on this internal line and cut, and then we can delete this piece. Now this point and this point are exactly on the end of that armhole. So if I delete these, then this now exactly fits this hole. We need to rotate it, so I'm going to rotate it so that the curve is pointing upwards. And what that means is that when we use our arrangement points, so if I press Shift F here and click it, it will arrange it with the curve attaching into the top. If you arrange it in any other way, you know, whether it's down or left or right, these arrangement points will arrange it strangely. So let me just Shift F to turn those off. So we need to sew it in. So this one is for here, I believe. Let's make sure. No, I've actually managed to move it around. So let's just rearrange our patterns because it's all getting very confusing now. So that one fits in there, and this one is the front, and that one's the front. There we go. Okay, so what I need to know is which one this is sewing to, and that will be that one there. And we can use our M to N sewing. So if I use my M to M segment sewing, I can select these two and press enter, and then tell it what I want it to sew it to, and that will be this one and this one. Now I need to press enter again to finish it, and I've got one of them the wrong way around. That's okay. I just need to go to my edit sewing, select the line, right click and reverse. There we go. And if I press space, whoops, something's going wrong there. Let me move it up a little closer. Yeah, something's not quite right there. Oh no, I'm not sure what it is. Let me hide the avatar. So with a shift and A, and it seems to be this blue line. What is that blue line? Looks like a tack or something. Let me just move that out of the way. Yeah, it seems to have a tack on it for some reason. I don't quite know how I did that, but I'm going to undo a few times until I haven't got it. There we go. Let's try that again. M to N. Well, actually no, I'll just do a segment sew, because I've got enough segments to do it in. So that's that one. I can just do this on the 3D avatar. We're using the 3D segment sew. That one to that one. There we go, that's much more like it. Yeah, I honestly don't know how I managed to do that one, but yeah, these things happen. Right, so shift A to re-show the avatar. And now I can start to unfold this to make the full sleeve. So with the edit pattern, I'll select this line, right click and offset as pattern outline. This is done perpendicular, but we could use extend. Extend is going to give us a slight angle, and I could perhaps take it out a little further and click OK. Just press space to let it sim, just so that it settles properly, and then I can just move this down and sim, move it down and sim until I get somewhere near where I want it to be. I don't want it to be that far, I want it to be a little bit up. Actually no, let's take it down that far, right as far as I want it, and then I can put the trim on that by cutting this piece. Okay, so sew those together. There we go, and we have an arm. So we have one arm, but we want two. So to do that, I'm just going to select this piece, and we'll do a symmetric pattern with sewing. Just put it off to the side. I was trying to look to get like a body width between those two, and that seems to get it into position quite well, and that seemed to do the trick, so that's good. There we go. Okay, so that's the arms, and I might actually tighten those ends up a little bit because they're a little bit baggy. There we go, and let's just pull that around a bit to take the poke out. Some of that poke will be down to the fact that there's not enough geometry yet, so don't be too concerned about it. Okay, so in the next one we're going to put the hood on, so I shall talk to you then. Okay, let's tidy this pattern up a little bit. Just move that away over there. There we go. Okay, so what I want to do is create a hood. Now a hood is generally two parts, and I'm wearing one now, and I was checking it earlier. So I've got a seam right down here, and then I've got obviously two seams doing it to the collar. Yeah, I realised that not all hoodies are like that. Some of them will have a little bit more, but that's where I'm going for. But I'm not going to put it right to the end, I don't think. I'm going to leave it a little bit open. So I know how big my neck area is. If I select this one and this one, I get the 2D line length of 247 millimeters. So I'm going to go perhaps about 240. So let's just get a rectangle up to start with. Let's go 240 by 240. Okay, and then this bottom line then will be long enough to go around the collar, but it's perhaps not tall enough. So I'm just going to arrange it in place. So with a Shift F, and I'll pop it on the side there. I can see that that's not nearly tall enough. If I drop it down to her shoulder, see it doesn't even go over her head. So I needed enough material to bend around there. So let's grab the top of that and move it upwards. There we go. Whoops, I didn't mean to press space there. I meant to right click and rearrange as 3D. There we go. Okay, so now I want to get the shape and the depth. Perhaps I think the depth is okay. I think her hair is perhaps going to be an issue, but we'll get around that, I'm sure. So let us curve this end off. So smooth curve, get the back right piece, and I'm just going to curve that off. I'm not going to curve it right to the end, but just enough, I think. Oh, I've done the wrong side. Excellent. Let's do the other side instead. There we go. Okay. And of course I need to sew this to our piece. So what we'll do is we use our M to N and start on the hoodie and press enter, and then I want this area, and it will be this area. I think it should go that way, and then press enter. Just having a look to see if there's anything crossed there. I think there might be. I'm not sure. Let me move this up to get a better look. Yes, see, it's crossed over. So I'll get to my sewing tool, right click and reverse, and that will sort that out. And then we can right click on that and symmetric pattern with sewing. Just pop it a little bit over. Let's move that to the other side. Pop these down a little bit just so they're a bit close to the head. And now I can sew up the back with the free sewing tool. There we go. So from there to there and there to there, and that should be good. If I press space, we will get a hood. But as you can see, it's a little bit tight and a little bit, not really what I want. So I think I'm going to have to adjust a little bit. Now, generally speaking, this is a case of not enough material around our front, and our front is just kind of a straight line, so it's not very exciting. It's not the right word I use, but that's where I'm going. So what I'm going to do is with the edit curve tool, edit curvature, so I'm going to extend that line and give it a curve, and that's giving it much more length and much more material with which to kind of sit and balloon and spread out. There's our bun. Look, don't think that's going to be annoying. I wish I could take the hair off this one. Just going to tease this a little bit just to get it where I want it. Now the other thing I said was that I wasn't going to put it right down to here. I want to move that a little bit this way, and for that we need the not that one the edit sewing tool. And what I'm going to do is just, whoops, that's the wrong seam. Let me zoom in a little bit more and it will be a little bit more accurate. There we go. I want the grey seam, and I want to move that away from the front. There we go, and I'll press space, and now I've got a little bit of space, and it's hanging much nicer, I think. All looks a bit crinkly, doesn't it? But that's kind of the way it is in this case. There we go. If you want to make it bigger but don't want to rescale anything, we have a choice in that, and that's just upping the warp and weft. So the warp and weft, the shrinkage warp and shrinkage weft, basically gives you the chance to resize a pattern without actually resizing a pattern. The geometry will stay the same, but the actual size of the pattern will change. And I want this to be a little bit larger, so we need to go greater than 100%. So if I went to say 110 for both, so you know, warp, I keep forgetting which way is which. Warp is kind of left to right and weft is top to bottom, or it's the other way around, I'm not sure. And you see that that's kind of loosened up a little bit and, you know, given us a slightly different look. And you know, that might not be enough, or it might be too much. So you know, if I simply go down to 105, I'll get another look and we'll see what that looks like. There we go, let's pull that around. Okay, so if I want to extend the back of the hood, you know, so it's not quite so just flat, we can do that just on the pattern tools by moving around this back point here. And I press space, and now I get a deeper, slightly more shaped version. You know, I can either use that to bring it more forward over a rise, or I could have it further back to, you know, give a little bit of depth and, you know, a slightly more interesting shape. There we go. Okay, so that's the hooded part of this. So I am going to add some trim to this at some point in time. I'm not entirely sure I'm going to do it now, but you know, we'll get there, I think. One thing I've just noticed actually, and what I don't like, is this bit at the top. I want this part to be flat, and for that to happen I'm going to have to move that out and then grab this curve point and just pull it down. There we go. Now we should get a much kind of flatter, less kind of peaked hood at the back. Oh, she's looking a bit more like a priest now. Let's pull that back a bit. There we go. Okay, so next bit then, we'll extend the bottom of this down to form a bit more of a dress. Well, you could leave it as it is if you wanted to have like a cut off hoodie, but I suspect that's probably a bit cold for this time of year. Okay, so when we come back we'll do that. We'll extend it down into a dress, and then we'll start to add trims and do all sorts of other bits and bobs. So I'll talk to you then. Okay, so I want to extend this down, but I want to leave kind of a mark here so that I know, you know, where this point is in space. So I'm going to select there and right click and unfold, or offset as internal, as pattern outline rather. We'll extend it quite a long way. Let's make it 400, somewhere about there, and then I just want to make sure that we're on extend or perpendicular. Actually doesn't matter because it's right angles, and click OK. And then if I just press space, it will settle in and I'll get an idea of the length, and that's alright. So let's do the same on the back. So offset as pattern outline. It's got all my settings from previously. So whoops, that's a bit inside the body, so let me press space and just pull these out so that they're not you know, dug deep into her, which would be bad obviously. Okay, so what we've got now is kind of four pieces that if I attempted to sew them together are going to really tighten up, and that's kind of evidenced by this triangle of space here. So we can do a little something to even that up. So if I grab this bottom point This point is going to stay where it was. I'm going to move it over, and that's going to fill some space, and that's going to start to accommodate for a hip essentially. And then we'll do a similar job on the back, and at some point in time we'll get to a point where these lines are very close together, and then I can sew those up. You could be a little bit more elegant about it if you wished, by adding some curvature to kind of the top area. There we go, and then we'll segment sew those together. There we go. And now we have kind of a loose baggy dress. Now I did leave those internal lines in there. I didn't mean to put them in there at all actually, so I'm just going to delete them out now. There we go. So there is a slight issue with this point where it comes to this this point here, in that it's causing a little bit of an artifact. An artifact's the right word. A little bit of a oddity about the pattern. So I'm going to use my smooth curve, and I'm going to drag that out and just press right click before I release, and I'll set that to 30 millimeters. And I'm doing that so that I can do exactly the same on the other side. So it's click and drag, and then before you let go of left click, right click and type in 30, and they're exactly the same now. If I press space, everything should be sewn up and everything should still kind of be in the right place. Might be my curve is a little exaggerated, but frankly that's going to be obscured very shortly by what I do to the bottom. Now I haven't got the back sewn up, which is a bit weird. Don't know why I haven't got the back sewn up. So let's do that. That's that one there, I think, and that should pull it a little tighter. Yeah. Oh, the front isn't sewn up either. How remiss of me. There we go. Okay, so it's a bit okay. It's a little bit boring. It's a little bit baggy. As I said, I was going for kind of warm and cozy, and that's exactly what I've got. And I've got this sharp line down the middle, but that's going to be taken out when I merge these lines together. There we go. You see that really softens now because there's no kind of sewing seam which has angle properties to it. We could do the same on the back, I guess. Let's do that and merge. There we go. Press space. Okay, so now I want to, make the dress a little bit more interesting, and that's to gather it in at the waist, and we'll do that in the next one. We're going to put like a very stiff belt around it, and that will gather it in and cause some interesting folds and creases and give it a bit of shape. Okay, so I will talk to you. Okay, so let's add a belt, and for this we'll need a new fabric, and I'll just click the add button here and it will think about it for a while. Let's turn my sim off so I'm a little bit more responsive, and I'll rename this as belt. Whoops. I'll give it a different colour just so that I know that it's working. And then down the bottom I'm going to change its physical property to trim full grain leather. So very stiff, very, won't misshape very much. And I'm going to draw out a rectangle, roughly a little bit more than twice the size of her width. There we go. So let's find an arrangement point to do this on. So Shift F, and I'm going to pop it around there. And this is a little bit too big, but that's okay. I want it to be too big because I'm going to shorten it until it works. As it is, if I try and make it work all in one lump, the belt is going to do crazy things with the underlying dress, and it will interfere with each other. And this way we should have a little bit more of an easier time. So let's sew those up. Now the other thing I want to do is just change the layer. I want this to be on top at all times. So I'll set the layer to 1, the dress is 0, and to also give it a bit of a better chance to fit and work properly, I'm going to decrease the particle distance to 10, which will increase the amount of geometry we have. And with that done, I'll press space and stop it almost immediately. So that's just sort of basically sewn it together, and I can see now just how big it is compared to the dress, and I can start to draw this in. Now it's easier if you double click on this middle point here with the pattern transform tool, because you will adjust it both sides at the same time. So I'm going to hit space and space again to stop it, and a little bit more, and space again to stop, and perhaps I'll let it go a little bit further. So it's starting to fit and get close. I'm going to make it smaller, and now it's fitting in there quite nicely. You'll see that it's gone through now, and that's what I was attempting to avoid. So I'm just going to hit Control Z there and make that a little bit bigger. There we go, and now it's sitting on top of there quite nicely. It's sliding down a little, and that's fine. It's just, you know, settling to the shape underneath it. So it's a bit of a cat and mouse game, this one, of just make it smaller, let it work, make it a little smaller, let it work. It's, you know, just setting it to the right size immediately doesn't mean it's going to work with the simulation. The simulation is going to, you know, calculate accordingly, and if you try and do too much at a time, it has a tendency to go wrong. So oft times it's small steps. There we go. So I'm probably down lower than I was previously when it was intersecting, but it is actually working, because I'm not asking it to do so much that it's going to be overwhelmed. There we go. So that's gathered it in a little at the waist. You might find it's too tall perhaps, so I'll just make it a little bit smaller, vertically that is, and just going to try my luck at one last smooth down there. There we go. Okay, so now I can, you know, work on the underlying dress to kind of create that kind of bulge you get over the top of the belt with a loose garment underneath. So it's, you know, gives that nice look. Again, don't go too mad, don't try and pull it, you know, a long way and have it go crazy. We just want to tease it very slowly. There we go. Now I've got a little bit of kind of a you know, that little bulge there that indicates there's a belt, basically, apart from the fact that there's a belt there. Okay, so oh, I've got some internal lines there I didn't mean to have. Let's get rid of those because they don't look very nice. There we go. Okay, so that's kind of that. What should we do next? I think we're gonna perhaps add just a little detail to the belt so that it doesn't look just like a piece of fabric wrapped around. We'll add a kind of detail there to show some sort of buckle, very simple one, just to, you know, give the effect. Okay, so I shall talk to you then. Okay, so approximately here I'm going to click on the belt approximately where the center is, and then in the 2D view I'm going to add some internal lines. So let's go internal polyline. I'm going to put one top to bottom on one side and one top to bottom on the other side. And now we can cut and paste those. Actually, I'm going to move them a little bit first because one of them's a bit too far over. There we go. So right click and cut and sew. Now this bit is going to form our kind of square belt buckle, and for that we're going to select the outside by double clicking, and then right click, offset as internal line, and I'm going to give it 10 millimeters. I'm going to exaggerate it a bit so that it's not you know, too unnoticeable, if that makes sense. And then click OK, and I'm going to right click and cut and sew that piece, and I'll just move it out of the way. Now, to give this a different kind of material property to make it stand out, I'm going to duplicate the belt so that the actual physical property stays the same, but I can change the look of it. So I'll copy that one, and then we'll call it belt buckle. There we go. And with that done, we can change these properties. So first of all, I want to take it from a fabric mat to a metal, and then we'll change the colour to something a little bit brighter, and I'll drag and drop it onto that piece, and we have kind of a simple-ish belt you know, kind of effect. It's not perfect, it's not going to be everything, but you know, it's better than having nothing. And we're going to add some detail to it a little bit later when we change the thickness of our garment. Okay, so next then we're going to start to put some trims on this, and these trims are going to be kind of a bit puffy, like a fur trim, so much thicker than everything else, and that's where we're going to start to add the, you know, thickness parameters to our garment. So I shall talk to you then. Okay, so this bit's very straightforward. I'm going to cut the bottom of these parts off, the main dress pieces, and then copy them over themselves. Well, no, I'm not going to copy them over themselves. I'm going to increase the thickness parameter, which is very straightforward. So I'm going to select those two lines and then right click, offset as internal. Going to make sure they extend to the pattern edge, and I'm going to give them a nice chunky kind of offset. 20 seems awfully small, so let's go 40 and click OK. And then we'll right click on these lines and cut and sew. So these pieces, these pattern pieces, have their own individual properties, and if we go down here, we have an add thickness for rendering, and if I put that up to 20, you'll see exactly nothing happens, and that's because we're in the wrong view mode. What we want to be in is the thick textured view, which is thick textured surface, and when I turn that on, you'll see that that comes up quite nicely. So we now have kind of a soft, puffy kind of edge. It's a little bit precise, but you know, that's something I'll deal with in texturing to give it a little bit of, you know, variation and alternative. What else can we do here? So the curvature here is interesting. Curve geometry, if I set this to 0, you'll see it becomes very angular. So we can actually control how curved our piece is. I'm not sure if we can overblow it or not. Let's try it. No, we can't. I thought I might be able to overblow it, you know, go beyond 100, but it's not going to let me do that, which is a little bit of a shame, but yeah, not the end of the world. Okay, I'm just going to check my sewing here. Edit sewing. Just making sure these are sewing to each other, and they are. That's good. Just making sure so that, you know, this kind of raised piece wasn't an offset of my sewing, rather than, you know, an offset of you know, the tool itself. Okay, so we can repeat that on the arm pieces, and I'm just going to do a little bit extra here. I'm going to offset them as an internal line. We use the same value to keep it consistent, and click OK. I'm going to right click, cut and sew, and then with the pattern transform tool I'm just going to make them a little bit smaller. So I'm going to double click on the middle to get the orange up, and then it changes from both directions. And the other side is done, that's good. And I'll press space and that will tighten those up. And then with both selected I can increase my thickness, and that gives me a little fluffy arm piece, which is both gathering the original arm in a little bit and securing it around the wrist, and you know, adding a nice little bit of fluffiness to it. Okay, so the last bit is the hood, which I'm going to do slightly differently. I'm going to do an offset for these, an offset as pattern outline. So it's right click, offset as pattern outline, not 400 millimeters, that would be way too much. Still 400, there we go. And make sure we got the internal line on and click OK. Now right click, cut and sew. Now these I want to make sure are properly sewn, so let's do that. So I don't appear to have a sewing line on that at all. Okay, actually I'm not going to sew these because I'm going to get a little strange artifact on the top of the head there. What I'm going to do is merge them together. So if I select that one and merge, will you merge? Yes. There we go, and press space. See, that's doing quite nice things to the hood. And then what we'll do is we will add some thickness to this. So again, about 20 millimeters, and press space. 20 millimeters might be a little too much, or it might not be enough. Depends how you feel about it. So I'm going to pull that back onto her head a little bit more, just tease it side to side a little bit, and now we have a kind of cozy wintry kind of dress with a bit of trim. There we go. Okay, so next then we'll start to work on some materials, and you know, change the material properties, change the look to get this to a more final look, and then we'll have a look at perhaps adding some other details. So I will talk to you then. Okay, so this is more a case of taste as much as anything. So first of all, on my main fabric, which I'm going to turn to call dress, we'll change the colour to a kind of Christmassy red, and that will change everything. I'm going to duplicate this material, so copy, and this one is dress trim, and we'll pop this one back to white, or a slightly off white if you wish. So let's drag and drop that onto all of our trim pieces. One more, there we go, and now it's starting to look a little bit more sensible. There we go. It's a bit hidden, that, isn't it? A little bit. It's quite possible that the length of the trim I've put on the hood is a little bit too much, so I'm actually going to reduce it a little bit. If I select that line and whoops, just move it, whoops, not all of it, just that line, just move it inwards, and then right click, and I just want to move it in, say 5 millimeters, and then press space. So it's a little thinner than the rest of it, but yeah, not too bad. And again, I'm going to pull it around on the head just until I get it to a point where it's yeah, looks nice. Okay, so one of the things about this this hood is it's not very stiff, so it is likely to collapse under its own weight. So let's adjust the material property to, or the physical material property, to see if we can make that work a bit better. So we'll do it for the whole dress to start with. So I'm going to select the dress material and go down, and we'll pick a different preset, and I think we might go for a bit of a fleece, and you'll see that that's immediately made it heavier and pulled everything down, which has helped a little with the hood, but not necessarily an awful lot. Another thing we could try is to actually just stiffen this edge. Oh, is that the back edge? No. So this edge, we can seam tape it. So if we add some seam taping, and just zoom in a little bit, you can see it's difficult to see on the red, but I can see it's coming a little bit. We might increase that to give it a little bit more. Whoops, 20, not 2. Give it a little bit more power, and then we'll press space, and that edge should hold up a little bit more. There we go. Okay, another thing that might not be helping this this particular piece is its pattern size, or its particle distance. So if I reduce that, therefore increase the geometry, it's going to have more geometry with which to fold and move against itself, and I think that's probably what the issue was. Well, much of what the issue was. Let's pull that forward a little bit. There we go. Similarly, I could make the trim a little stiffer or a little firmer, so we could use a different Sherpa fleece for this one. Let's just try a heavier one. There we go. Now it's, yeah, it's a little better, I think. Okay, so what else do we need to do? Well, we could do all sorts of things really. We could put a pocket on it. We could do we could change this from a matte kind of material to let's say, well, velvet. Is velvet good? Well, that's quite Christmassy, isn't it? It's a bit bright. But we can have a look down here. Roughness intensity. Roughness, that's it. If I take that, no, that's the that's exactly not the one I wanted. Metalness is 0, physical property is that. I thought there was something else I could use here that would really help me. No, okay. I thought I could change the kind of intensity of that shine. Maybe I can, or I'm just not seeing it. Okay, so there we go. Similarly on the leather, let's go to the leather belt and darken that up, because that's not dark enough. I hate using pure black, so let's just take that a little bit off. There we go. And yes, yeah, more or less happy. So I talked earlier about the thickness property, and we've just had a quick look at it on this. What we're going to do is adjust the thickness on some of the other pattern pieces to make them look a little less flat and one-dimensional. So I will talk to you then. Okay, so chiefly for this, it's going to be for the belt and the buckle. So the belt pieces I want to be a little thicker. I want them not to just look like a circle of, you know, nothing. So I'm going to set those up to a 5mm thickness. There we go. Now we have a little bit more kind of width to that belt to make it a little bit more realistic. But our buckle has obviously flattened. Now I want to give more thickness to this because I want it to be proud of the belt. So we'll perhaps go to 7 on that one, and that's going to expand out a little bit in all directions to deal with that. Now we looked earlier at the curvature parameter there. If I start turning this down, I'm going to turn that from a quite, how can I put it, rounded kind of thing into something a little bit more square. So I'm going to put that, say, somewhere about 10, and then for the belt I'm going to do much the same, because it's not cloth, it's a piece of leather and it's metal. So let's give this a little more. Let's make it 8. There we go. And now we've got a bit more of a proud belt buckle piece over that nice leather belt that we had a look at earlier. Yes, right, so what else shall we do? Well, there's all sorts of things we can do, really. We can, oh, it's that damn hair, look. Here's one little trick. As well as the pattern thickness and the visibility, rather, the rendering, we also have a collision offset, and the collision offset will say how close a particle or a cloth piece will get to the avatar before it stops. And if I increase this value, say 10, the hood is going to stay further away from the head, giving us a little bit of an illusion of a bit more volume under there, perhaps a little more hair, but also keeps it away from that bun. So, you know, that's good. Right. I think, you know, beyond actually doing the texturing, which I hadn't planned to do, I just want to show you the dress. That's pretty much as I was going to do. So I hope you found this useful. I hope you enjoyed it. I hope it's, you know, a little Christmas fun for you. And I will talk to you again in another set.